Hi, this is Mashnu and it's day 10 of our middle game training. So I've chosen this time for a classic game. It's a very beautiful game fragment that was played in 1882 in Warsaw between two grandmasters whose names we'll still hear sometimes, with white Simon Winauer, that's very well known for the Winauer variation in the French defense, and with black is playing Mikhail Chigorin, and Chigorin is known for his Chigorin defense against the Queen's Gambits. Thus with white d4, black plays d5, c4 is the Queen's Gambit, and then Chigorin's move is knight to c6. We don't see that nowadays very much, but in those times it was a very good weapon that was used often. In amateur level, still knight c6, Chigorin's move is played, and it's a good way to surprise the white players who like the Queen's Gambit, because many times they don't know how to handle it. But well, let's go now to this position here, because I'm going to ask you to look at this position from black's point of view. It's black to move, and white's last move was rook to d1, so it was like this, and then the rook went to g1. I'm sorry, rook to g1. Of course, the pressure on g7 is tremendous. So it's up to you now to think, what can we do with black to react to this. I'll continue the explanation in a few seconds, so if you would like to pause the video to think a minute or 5 about this, go ahead. Alright, so we continue now. What to do against g7? The threat is, of course, rook takes g7. Remember, in one of my previous videos I told you about the two options of defense, an active defense and a passive defense. When we have both options, we always must first search and investigate the active defense. So in this case, we can start making a plan and fantasizing with black. What would we like to achieve? So let's for a moment forget the threat on g7 and think about what we would like to achieve here. Now we can see that black's position has tier 2 very weak points, especially the f3 pawn is very weak. It's already attacked 2 times, defended only once. It's the entrance towards the white king. Also we see that we have 2 very well positioned bishops here on these diagonals. The rook is active, involved, only this rook is not. That's the only thing. So if we think about this positionally, strategically, we perhaps could say, okay, we would like to improve the position of our worst piece by bringing the rook to f8, rook a to f8. If there wasn't a threat against g7, it would be definitely a good move. But right now something more urgent is needed. If the queen would not be defending the f3 pawn, just imagine this queen being, for example, on f2 or on b3 or any other square, then we would be able to take with queen takes f3, and after that capture the knight on e4. This is the main thought for the following deflecting combination. Mikhail Chigorin played here the move bishop to d4, and that's a way to deflect the queen from the defense of f3. If the queen moves, for example, to d3 to stay defending this pawn on f3, then the b2 bishop will fall, so that would lose a piece. That means that white has no other choice than to take this sacrifice, queen takes d4, as happened in the game. But now we see what has changed in the position Well, still the pressure on g7 is very big, but we can take on f3 with check. Queen takes f3 was played. There's only one legal move for white, that's rook to g2. And now how to continue? We have, of course, our light squared bishop, and the rook on g2 is on a light square. The rook is pinned, so the following move is not very surprising. Bishop to h3. So now we can already take back the exchange. We will sacrifice the piece, and we have this weakness here, and this knight might be in trouble later. Rook 8 to g1 was played by white, and now black increases the pressure by activating his worst positioned piece. The rook on a8 goes to e8 with the threat of taking the knight on e4. So if we look at the position right now, we can see that everything has turned. Still, we can say that the pressure here is big, but the thing is that these four pieces that are attacking g7 now, one of the main pieces, the one that wanted to take on g7, is pinned now. So that means that white has no threat at all any longer. There is no way to break this pin. The king cannot move. So we can say that all the dynamism in the position has gone from white to black now. But we are still some material behind, and right now in the game white decided to return some material by playing queen to c3. Of course, the threat that we have is bishop takes g2, rook takes g2, and then taking on e4, winning a piece, or taking on e4 right now. Let's see what would happen if white would try to save the piece. So, for example, by playing the knight to g3. Knight g3, that was not played in the game. Well, let's do a little exercise. Just pause the video and see if you can calculate how black wins here. I'll continue in a few seconds. Okay, probably you found the following mate in 3 moves, or perhaps you didn't. Then here's how it goes. Bishop takes g2 check. Only move is rook takes g2. Now a check on the back rank, and now it's important that the rook on g2 is pinned, so it can go back to g1. So the only move is knight to f1, and then we take the knight. Rook takes f1, it's checkmate. So saving this knight by moving it to g3 is impossible. There is no way. The rook cannot move to defend the knight, because then queen takes g2 is checkmate. So white moved here queen to c3 with the idea of returning a piece, and perhaps if white takes on c3, then we can retake. We lose later the exchange. So perhaps there is an idea here. Let's see what will happen here if queen takes c3. Right now the knight takes c3, so the knight is saved, and we can take here. But if we count the pieces now, well, it's white having 2 light pieces against a rook. We have a few pawns more, that's true, so black is still a bit better, but this is not that convincing. That means that here, after queen to c3, something else is needed, and there is a difference if we change the move order. Instead of taking the queen on c3, the best move is to take first on g2. Bishop takes g2 check. After retaking, now not changing queens of course, but taking the knight on e4. Now queen takes f3, followed, and the following move is, let's say, the beautiful detail, because if we take now the queen, then we would have, well, still a much better endgame, a 1 endgame probably, but even clearer than that is to first give a check on e1. because now after rook g1 we can trade rooks first and then take the queen. So then with the rooks off the board, the endgame is totally won for black. In this position we now are resigned. So let's have a look at the whole example one more time. I'll go back to the initial position. So we have this position, rook to g1 was played by white, and a possible passive defense was not chosen. It was there, of course, but for example defending g7 by playing the queen to e5, this would be a passive defense, and perhaps still black has some advantage, although it's not very clear. We have very active pieces, and later we could go with the rook to f8 perhaps to put pressure on the f-file. But this is, you see the difference, that in this kind of cases it's good to search just a little deeper to see if we can have our own attacking plan. And bishop to d4 is a move that deserves an exclamation mark, because it's a very good move. Queen takes d4, and now f3 falls with check. Only move rook g2, bishop to h3, putting pressure on g2, threatening checkmating 1, so rook to g1 is forced. And now activating our most passive piece, the rook on a8 goes to e8. So you see this kind of strategic rules, positional rules of activating the worst piece also count in this kind of tactical positions. Perhaps especially in tactical positions it's important to have the most firepower that we can get. Now queen to c3, and black doesn't trade queens right now. By the way, taking on e4 now, that's something that I didn't talk about. Of course that could be an option to take now. Rook takes e4, and at first sight you might think that this is more or less the same result, but it is not, because after queen takes f3, rook takes f3, now the pin is gone here, you see. So the rook on g2 can now take on g7. So it means that suddenly we have an equal position. The king must go, of course, to f8, not to h8 because of the bishop there. So then white can take on h7, and soon perhaps the rooks can be on the 7th rank, and this is totally unclear. So it's very important what move order we choose. In this position we can say we have three options: to take on c3, to take on g2, or to take on e4, and there's only one good move, that's the most forcing move, to take on g2, because after rook takes g2 still we have this rook pinned here, so there is no threat of taking on g7. So now we can take on e4, and after queen takes f3, a beautiful detail, the check on e1, and here is the end of the game, because, well, let's see how this would be: take, 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 and this is the end position that we can reach, and here is this endgame is totally lost for white. This pawn will fall, the rook will go to d2, and this pawn will fall as well, and the black pawns will march to the other side of the board and promote. Okay, so this was day number 10. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next time in the next part 11. Alright, thanks for watching, and goodbye.